Okay, so now I'm going to show you the file that I created using those other two plugins that I just showed you. The first one I used to create the table links, and then the second one I used to at least get started with the code, but then I cleaned up the code manually. So I'll show you some of that. So here's the table links. And by the way, folder, in this folder, these two files are really where all of your table links should go. Back on the diagram, see all the table, none of these other files that we're going to create should link directly to the database. It should all go through one of these two files, table wrappers or the SQL builder. And so that's what I'm doing right now is the table wrappers. So here are your table links. So there could be lots of them. I mean, we're only working with 4, but there could be lots of them in here. But we also have a class module for each table link that we have. That's why it's called a table wrapper. Each table is wrapped in one of these things. Then I also added an interface. Let me show you a little bit about that. And then this one is just a base so that I didn't have to repeat a lot of code in these classes. These classes call on code over and over again that's in here. Okay, so let me start with these two modules here. Table wrappers, get object functions. What this is each of these are a public function so that you can access these class modules from other files. See, with each one of these, what I had to do is I had to change its instancing to public not creatable. And what that means is that they're visible from other files as long as you set a reference to this file. However, the not creatable part means that you can't use the new keyword outside of this file. So the way to get around that is to write a function, and I just follow the naming convention get, and then followed by the class name as that class, and then I set that function equal to a new one. And that will pass that to a reference from another file. So it works pretty good. So let me do a couple of tests, okay? This first one here is a demonstration that I made. I can see I misspelled the word demonstrate, but that's okay. Let me fix that right now. Okay, so this one, I put in a few instructions here so I could walk through them real quick. First, you declare an object that is the same name as the table you want. So I want the table customers. And so I'll put that in this object right there. So then set the object with the get function that I just showed you in this other module here. So there's get followed by the class module. I'll go ahead and I set that up in there. Then declare another object as the interface, iTable wrapper. So I'm just going to say OWrapper as that interface. So now what happens, and then set the two equal to each other. Always set the wrapper equal to the first object. So what happens now is, and by the way, that's kind of how interfaces work in Access, in VBA in general. A lot of people don't know that. But if you're going to implement an interface, you've got to do one of two things. You either have to double up your code to create both a public and a private method for each function, or you just use two, like I'm doing, this is a cheat way, you use two object variables. You have one for the actual methods that you want to use relating to the table, and the others are for manipulating the records. And so that's exactly what this says here. So now the table wrapper manipulates the record set, while the first object allows access to the fields. Okay. So with the wrapper object, I got a little with block here, right? So dot select, see with the object wrapper, I have all these things available to me. I got a group by clause, having clause. I can open a single record or an entire record set. I can establish an order by clause. I can expose the record set that gets created so I can pass it along to other code and they can manipulate it just like DAO code. And then, of course, a select clause is usually the first one we choose. The table name, you can set it or you can get it back, but because I'm using a table wrapper, it already knows the table name. You don't need to set it. And then the true record count, a lot of people don't know that DAO record sets have a record count property, but you actually have to access all the records first. So you have to do a move last and then a move first in order for that record count to actually mean anything. And if there's no records in your record set, that even throws an error. So I have some code behind this true record count property that takes care of all that. Okay, so this is a typical with block with a wrapper. I select clause. My select clause is going to be I want these fields. And if you omit a select clause, it'll just bring back all the fields. You can establish a where clause. I have this one commented out right now, but you'll see in a minute I'm going to do a typical where clause. And then you just tell it to open the record set. You check make sure you got some records before you move on. And if so, from that record set, you start doing move first, and then here's a little do loop, right? And so I'm just going to debug print and then see, this is where the first object comes in. See, the wrapper object doesn't have the field names like customer name or whatever, but OCusts does. The object the customer's object. See, it has, these are all the fields that are in the table. That's the whole point. You can now access the fields in the table without having to remember what fields are there available for you. Okay, so I'm going to debug print the customer name, the government, and then remember that's a Boolean flag, and the created on date. Let me open up my thing here, and let me go ahead and execute this. Okay, so there it is right there. There's the 3 records that you saw in this table right here. Okay. So yeah, we saw those 3 records earlier, and now the code can get to them also. Let me close that up. Once the handshake's been established, I can just run this code. I'm going to hit him this way. But you can see each time I run, now it's real fast. Okay, so now let me take off this, or put this where clause in play. And this is a typical like. You know, these are wildcards. So I'm going to search for any customer whose name has an ing in it. You know it's going to come back with both. Okay, there you go. See, so and again, it was fast because I'm still in the time limit of that handshake with the MySQL Server, and that is not a reflection of my code. That is a reflection of the installation of SQL Server and possibly the installation of Access on this machine and how they talk to each other. So I'm going to wrap it up with this. What this does is, this file gives you a place to put all your table links and then wrap code around them. And you know, when I get it done, it'll be able to do that very quickly with an add-in. And it'll even create the object functions for you, and it'll even create the, well, no, you have to do your own unit tests. I almost said it was going to create unit tests, but it won't. But it'll create the iTable wrapper interface and the RST base, which does a lot of the heavy lifting of the DAO code, you know. It actually queries the database itself. Okay, so that's a wrap up for this video.